Well, this looks pretty official, huh? A long old board table and got my microphone right up here just like a real-time announcer. Got to mix it up a little bit, right? Right. All right, so Kenji in London, England. Paul, what would be the definition of a perfect, ideal loudspeaker? Is it true that a flat frequency response at every point in space is all you need to achieve perfect sound? How do we, consumers, know how close to perfection any given speaker is, especially since few speaker manufacturers are willing to provide detailed test measurements? Well, that's true. I suppose most speaker manufacturers don't really give a whole lot of information. I mean, they don't show plots that are meaningful, and I don't believe there is such a thing as a flat loudspeaker because I don't think that technically is possible right now. By flat, we mean something that is never deviating in frequency and amplitude. So if we were to draw a straight line, I mean, it would be like an amplifier, right? So an amplifier has just a straight line. There's zero deviation at 1,000 cycles or 2,000. Instead, you're going to get this rocky movement like that. And so, first off, while it might be nice to think about something like that, I don't believe currently it is technically possible to come up with a flat speaker. I will tell you that some of the very worst speakers I've ever heard in my life were the closest to being flat of any speaker I'd ever heard. Several designers have told me this. In fact, who was it? John Curl, my friend John Curl, who is the JC in Mark Levinson's design, the JC, this or that. That was all John Curl. He designs all the Parasound products, a lot of the Mark Levinson. He worked with the Grateful Dead. John's a brilliant, very, very great designer of electronics, and he gave tried his hand at speaker manufacturing, or design anyway, and got, using a whole bunch of pretty cool tricks that he and I talked about, got pretty close to flat. I mean, it wasn't flat, but it was closer than most. Turned it on, and it sounded like nothing he would want to put his name onto. And I think that, well, no one's ever heard a flat speaker, so we can't say, but again, it may be all the gyrations one has to go through to get it pretty flat. Harbeth, I think, is it Alan Shaw that is the designer? Harbeths are pretty flat as speakers go, and they do sound good. So I don't think that's a strong rule of thumb. Arnie Nudell, who is my mentor and the late Arnie Nudell, I should say, sadly, was always a big fan of using the frequency deviations in amplitude of speakers, as he put it, like an artist's palette. If you're going to have a speaker that's plus or minus, let's say, 2 dB, that's pretty tight for a speaker. It's not bad. Maybe 3 dB, but let's just call it 2 dB. Arnie's philosophy was, well, why not be in charge of where that -2 and where that +2 and where that +1 and all the deviations within that window where those happen? Because if you have a plus amplitude deviation, let's say at 800 hertz or somewhere around that area, it's going to be real honky on voices. But if you have a dip, it'll have actually depth. It'll actually pull out, and we used to call that the Nudell dip, where it kind of dipped down below in the, I think it was like between a 1K and down to 400 hertz or so, but he would just gently dip it down, given that he knew he could never make a flat speaker. So, I think the only way to know from measurements whether a speaker is going to be any good, I don't know how you would do that. I think you have to listen to it, read the reviews, find reviewers you trust, and listen. It's also figure out what motivation do the designers have? There's a whole bunch of speaker companies out there that are just cranking out stuff, and they don't care how it sounds. They go for measurements, they go for price. They don't really care, like I do, or like you probably do, how it sounds. That's not a big concern to them. As long as it meets certain criteria, has bass, and then they're happy. And so you want to look up manufacturers that actually give a rat's ass about high-end sound and that it sounds like music. And not many of them do, but there are some out there. So thanks. Appreciate the question. Bye.